He's on regular acupuncture treatments. We have trained him to pull. He can pull like 5 bales of hay, and he feels really proud of himself. His brother Merlin is fully trained, so he's watched Merlin do work. So he's really wanted to be part of it, and so just to make him emotionally feel included.
He just stands there exactly how he is right now, just looking, watching, waiting for someone to come and play with him.
He wants something to do.
Yeah, he really wants something to do. Oh, Texas.
His name is Tex. He's the second biggest horse in the world.
What are you trying to pick my pockets for?
I'm sitting down with the filmmakers behind the upcoming film Working Horses. It's already done, right? But it's going to be hopefully premiering pretty soon.
This whole situation with the carriage horses in Central Park, and we saw it on the news, right? And we just thought, maybe there's something here, because most of the reporting on the carriage horse thing was very like soundbitey, so we wanted to get like a little more in depth and find out what was really going on.
Yeah, really the film explores like relationships between humans and animals. It's we always talk about how like the film is never meant to be polemic in any way. It's really kind of us turning a lens onto the relationship between working horses and human beings, and it's told from kind of 3 different perspectives in that way.
Obviously, a big part of the film are these kind of extremes. So the film takes place both in the country in Massachusetts, correct? And also right in the heart of New York City by Central Park. So can you talk a little bit about stylistically how you wanted to approach creating those 2 very different environments and how you blended them together?
Through like going out and shooting, it was very kind of natural, because when you're shooting in Massachusetts, there's this kind of natural, slower rhythm to everything. Then when you're in the city, there's this, everything's very kinetic and constantly go, 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 go. So very naturally during the shooting process, it kind of painted itself in a way. One thing that our colorist was really good at, he was able to bring a little bit of more life into the city, but ultimately everything was very concrete. Everything had this very kind of concrete city feel.
Yeah.
So speaking of concrete, this issue is kind of anything but. It's obviously very controversial. There's a lot of people that feel very extreme about it on either side of it. And one thing that I took away from the film was as you'd mentioned, the film doesn't really take sides so much as it is more of just, here's what's kind of going on, and it's almost more about the people.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just a little bit of background in terms of the issue. The carriage horses have been in New York City, I guess, for about 150 years, something in that area. And, in the late 20th century and early 21st century, I mean, there's been numerous attempts to ban the carriages. There's a lot of animal rights activists don't want them there. And their argument is that it's not safe for the horses, that they make contact with traffic, that they're inhaling fumes, those sorts of issues, So, but really it's kind of, there've been multiple attempts in the past to ban them, but they have, in the Mayor de Blasio, the Mayor of New York City, they have somebody who's sympathetic with their cause, and he has just actually passed a bill to ban the carriage horses. So it's really like everything has just kind of come to a head just as we're, putting this film out. We started filming about a year ago. The legislation has actually been introduced to ban the carriage horses. So that's kind of a setup with them, So these very adamant, very passionate animal rights people that spend a lot of time on the Hack Line, which is on 59th Street in Central Park. And Central Park is the main area where pretty much the only area where they have these carriage horses. So there's a lot of heated arguments, a lot of heated debate, people's arguments back and forth, but we wanted to get beyond that. And so we interviewed and spent a lot of time with animal rights people and also with the carriage drivers and see, what's their life like, their daily functions, and so it was important to get the perspective from both.
We always try to make what we call like democratic films in a way. I mean, not point for point. It's not, like NewsHour or something, but it's, we let people talk, give their piece. And I think that in order to like really understand anyone's point of view, you have to understand them as people. And so that's always something we try to do with all the films we've made so far, is really explore people through not just like, the work that they do, but also how they feel about different things. And that's always, you can't invalidate, someone's feelings.
I'm glad you brought that up. That was actually going to be one of my questions, was that you guys are actually a team where you've worked on many, many projects together, all what, we would categorize as you said, democratic films, where there are these kind of hot issues that are coming up, and they're very political many times, but you kind of get behind that a little bit and you make it more about the people.
Our style is kind of very, very rooted in like that Maisel Brothers kind of verite. I mean, we're not, locked into some dogma about like our style, but at the same time, it's always about finding, like you said, finding these events that are happening and kind of getting to know the people that are involved more. Because politics can paint really ugly portraits in a way, and it's I don't know. Most of the time, it's Keif and I out there, just the two of us working, and it actually helps in this whole in our style a lot because we get access to more because it's just two people. You say, hey, we're going to bring a film crew. They think there's going to be lights and people walking around, whatever, and it's a lot of times they've been surprised when it's like I'm holding a camera and Keif's there with a microphone.
A little less intimidating.
Yeah, and also in that same way, we get to be more intimate with our subjects, and it helps people to really open up.
I think that that's a problem now with a lot of documentaries. Is they're very they're very black and white, and good guy, bad guy, and where do you stand? And I think a lot of documentaries now just re-entrench people in terms of their own point of view, and that may be a commercially viable thing, but I'm not sure that's the best thing for documentary, because to me, the essence of documentary is democracy, is a varied opinions.
I do feel like there's a crisis in documentary cinema right now, and I think that is kind of like what Keif was talking about. Oh, there's this commercially viable thing that becomes, oh, this is the issue, and then this is the solution. And that's one thing that sometimes viewers, I don't want to say struggle with, but like it's less obvious. We don't come out and say, well, you must believe this by the end of this film. Mm-hmm. Because honestly, I'm not a horse expert. Like for the example of this film, I'm not, we worked on a film called Under the Bus about labor relations with the school bus drivers. I'm not a union labor expert, but I do, so I have opinions about these things, but it's not my place to everyone must think this way.
We're not interested in reinforcing our own beliefs or our audience, radicalizing our audience.
So what are you interested in?
I think insight, I think insight into behavior, into humanity, and, I have a emotional, intellectual curiosity in the way people tick, what makes people tick, and why people do certain things and behave certain ways. So I think a lot of what we do is we're capturing behavior.
Well, a lot of what you're talking about with these, films having a very specific point of view, a lot of it comes down to marketability and just, it is hard to get a film selected for a festival, screened, aired on television, whatever it is, when people don't know what to think about it. And sometimes people need to be told what to think about a film. And so it can be hard to just look at a film and say, you know what, this is beautiful. And I learned a little bit more about an issue, and just walk away with that and not have some very specific message drilled in. So do you have other people that you entrust to kind of sit in and review your work, or how does that process work for you guys?
Well, in the post room, we're usually sitting about this far apart from each other in front of whatever the edit system, and we watch the footage individually and we come up with concepts and we talk a lot of stuff out or argue stuff out, whatever, and then during the process we show
It's
to
like a circle.
Yeah, it's like these layers.
Trusted circle.
Yeah, so it's like at the beginning we have some really rough stuff. So there's 2 or 3 people we show it to, and it's like, will you tell us if we're on the right track, or is this how does this read to you? And then once it gets to a certain point, we have some people that have provided really good guidance for us. That we show the film to, and we usually get back really detailed feedback. And then the last we've discovered is doing these kind of, we have tiny test screenings, maybe a room full of 10, 15, maximum 20 people, and see how it kind of just plays to an audience. Because, showing a film, we're not making these films for other filmmakers, and we're not really making them for the people that are involved in whatever the political situation is going on. We're we're making these films for the general public, right? And so the best way to really gauge, am I communicating with the public correctly, or is the film reaching the public, is by having like a tiny screening.
Working as one person, you have a tremendous blind spot. Working as two people, the blind spot is cut down a little bit, but it's still there, you know? Yeah, and you're not aware of what you're not aware of, you know? So it really is very critical. I mean, with this film in particular, we thought we were picture locked, and we went to a press screening, and there was maybe 15, 20 people there, and we realized we weren't picture locked because we had issues, you know, and the film was 10 minutes too long. And thank God that we had this screening, this small screening, because we get some really good feedback.
So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love hosting screenings, is for this exact reason. And I agree with you completely. There's something really, I mean, talk about how people tick, you know, what makes them tick. It's a fascinating study in social psychology to see how people feel comfortable or not giving feedback when they're alone versus when they're kind of in a group, you know? And I think people feel a little bit more comfortable sometimes if someone in a crowd raises their hand and says, actually, this didn't work for me, or whatever, and then all of a sudden someone's like, oh, thank God, I felt that too, you know, or whatever. You know, if they're too shy to say it, or they don't know how to articulate it.
And it's interesting because you can feel it in the audience when something's like, if a scene isn't saying what it's supposed to,
Tuning out.
or yeah, people are like tuning out, or if a scene is too long, or a couple scenes are too much for people. You know, and it's also, you got to realize you got to kill your darlings sometimes. Like one of my favorite moments in the film, I think we cut.
It's because this issue is so heated and so like polarized. That, you know, people have very strong opinions that have nothing to do with your film. You know, so we've had that where people have taken things personally, subjects, or you know, even in one case, a horse of a subject that was on film. He was very emotional about what was going on screen. So I don't think he was completely able to separate that from, you know, his reality versus what was up on the screen. So it's always this thing about, you know, separating the constructive from the personal, and you know, that's kind of filter you gotta have to have.
With this issue, as we talked about, there are people that feel extreme ways about animal rights, and others who say, you know, this is a totally legitimate relationship to have with horses, and we're not putting them in any danger, and it actually, you know, it's the difference between earning a living and not, and so on and so forth. Do you feel like there's room for each side to kind of give a little?
I mean, I think that in most cases there's room for negotiation, you know. That doesn't seem to be like the reality of what's going on now, you know, in this particular instance. I know that the carriage drivers have tried to make some concessions, and they've done a lot. There's a lot of regulation in terms of like the way that the horses have to be handled. It's a very emotional issue, you know, and the emotions on both sides are very very strong. But in terms of the carriage drivers, it's like they're trying to make a living, you know, and they don't see what they're doing as anything wrong, you know. So they're just seeing, I think, from that perspective, you know. So everyone has their kind of like polarized perspective, and I think hopefully what this film will do will give each side and the general public some sort of insight into the other person's position.
And I think a big part of it is that the media hasn't really been helping. I think media on both sides, those who promote the ban and those who promote keeping the carriage horses in the park, I think they're doing a lot to like feed the flames.
Yeah, well, headlines sell papers.
I mean, yeah, I'm not going to get into like the problem with contemporary journalism. That's an interview for another time. But like, we're not trying to change anyone's opinion. The film's there so people can make their own decisions and own opinions. But at the very least, maybe understand others a little more.
Why do you think a regular Joe needs to see this film? Someone who, let's say, is a lifelong New Yorker, never takes carriage rides, doesn't even go anywhere near Central Park, doesn't live on a farm, doesn't like horses, doesn't dislike horses. It just doesn't affect their daily lives. So for someone like that, why is this film important?
I think that there's an inherent drama in what's going on. You have, there's a lot of livelihood at stake, and I think on everyone's end. And I think that people can, especially now, like in the way things are in the economy, and I mean, like etc. Like I think everyone understands when there's a looming danger over your job, or if you think that there's an injustice being done.
There's a lot of pretty horses. You know, if you love horses and animals, like this is a great film because there's some really great personalities in terms of horses and beautiful horses. You know, we have this one horse, Tex, who's the second biggest horse in the world, and they have him at Palmer in the at the Blue Star Agriculture, and we follow his development. You know, from like a really crazy wild horse they don't know they got in an accident or he was abused or something. They took him in, and they're rehabilitating him. And there's this great guy from Iran that like rides him, which is like insane because this horse is like is
Very
huge, wild horse, and he's huge. But you see that like his development, you know, his emotional development, how they deal with these horses, and especially ones that have, you know, problems in the past. But yeah, what Peter was saying, I think it's important. And me and Peter do a lot of films about working people. I know that the mayor has proposed, you know, them transitioning them into like taxi drivers, and I know that a lot of them don't want to do that, you know. So there are certain questions that come up about, you know, being able to do a job that you like to do, you know, and the right to do that. And I know that the animal rights people feel very strongly that you shouldn't have the right to, you know, put these horses into danger. So that's a very that's a main component of this is that debate, you know, and I would like people to think about that, you know.
Why are you drawn to that? Why not scripted, sci-fi, all the other types of genres, and just within filmmaking?
I am into all those other things as well. You know, yeah, I think.
I guess
I need a minute here.
Feature
I just like I think like for me personally, like verite style is very innate in me. You know, I've always kind of like my mind works that way. You know, like I like everything in the street is a scene. You know, and it's like it's almost perfect the way it is. You know, like the lighting is great. You know, and like, you know, when you see some people arguing in the street or people hugging or something like that, you know, I always see it as kind of like this verite documentary in my head, you know, and I guess it's kind of like an innate way that I think, you know. Also, in terms, I mean, to be frank, I mean, in terms of making narrative, it's very expensive, and it's a lengthy process. I mean, documentary is a lengthy process in the sense that you need to follow a story, you know, and see where it goes, you know, especially verite, because you don't know where it's going to go, you know. But in terms of us, I mean, we don't have huge budgets on our films, you know, so it's great to be able to just pick up a camera and utilize our own skills that we've developed and make a film, you know, instead of waiting around, you know, for someone to make our film for us. You know, we go out and we make the film, and I think that's, for me, is a great way to work.
You know, I'm one of those types of people that I really enjoy escapist films, like really kind of far out like things, and it's nice to work in a more grounded like genre, like verite documentary, but also it's also very fun because Keif and I, what is a really interesting and entertaining element of it is Keif and I don't always have overlapping styles in certain areas, and that can, like, those compromises can make something really amazing. And like I always try to make something like, you know, extravagant, ridiculous, you know, it's like how far can we push this, and you know, with music and light and all these other things, and meeting somewhere in between can make like really, really interesting cinema.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, it's like this verite, as pure verite, is total bullshit. Like, I mean, as soon as you place a camera, as soon as you turn it on, what angle you're shooting from, as soon as you put a light up, I mean, you're altering reality, you know. And there's some filmmakers that I really love, like the Maysles brothers, and they kind of preach this kind of pure verite cinema. And, you know, I absolutely love their films, but I think that's total horseshit, you know, like, you know, Werner Herzog always attacks them, you know, for this being, what are the accountants of truth or something?
Oh, yeah, well, and rightfully so.
Yeah, verite. And, you know, I think what we do is more like, I would say like a stylized verite or stylized direct cinema. You know, because it's, you know, you're doing cinema. You know, this is not life. You know, this is an interpretive thing. You know, this is art, and this is being creative. You know, and we've asked subjects to you know, speak lines, as long as it's within the spirit of what we're doing, to recite lines, to reenact things, you know.
Well, because we're not journalists. I mean, I think that's one
Yeah.
important thing that we always have. I think we battle, like, we've had arguments with people about this
Yeah.
before, is that, like, we're not journalists. I mean, there is certain journalistic elements to what we do, but at the same time, we are in a creative medium.
Yeah.
And the truth, frankly, is really boring sometimes, and you need to embellish, or you need to visually make it interesting, or, you know, make it sound interesting, and it's that's what makes it really fun to experiment with taking different elements from different genres, you know. Like the Maisel brothers, they would never put a tripod down, like,
Yeah.
and we would never have gotten some of the gorgeous stuff that we were able to get if we hadn't been able to, like, really, you know, plan things.
Especially this type of documentary, you know. I mean, it's so heavily, you know, based on access, you know, and access is such a huge part of what we do, you know, and you know, that makes up a lot for not having, you know, $1 million budget, you know, is getting access. It's big, you know, it's really big. So we just want to thank those people that gave us access.
Where can audiences see the film now or soon? And what's your kind of hope? What's your kind of hope as far as viewership goes?
Well, we have, right now on the internet, you can see our trailer, and we also have been putting up deleted scenes. So workinghorsesfilm.blogspot.com. People can go check out some of that content now, as well as a lot of great behind the scenes photos and things. And we're looking at setting up in early 2015 a number of screenings in and around New York. And we have submissions out. It's just starting to be that beginning of the year film festival cycle, and we'll be doing the festival circuit in the spring and summer and early this winter.
Thank you guys again, and I guess I'll see you around.
Thank you, Heather.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah.